would have nothing if it wasn't for you. Beautiful one, beautiful one. Look where we started, how far we've gone. I'm running after your love, leaving it all to take all of you. Love of my soul, you and only you. It's only you, consumed by your love, wrapped in your beauty. Love of my soul, you and only you. It's only you. Come on, what? All of the good things are because of you. Beautiful one, beautiful one, beautiful. And I'm so grateful, and I'm just so grateful that you don't give up. I'm still running after your love, leaving it all to take all of you. Love of my soul, you and only you. It's only you, consumed by your love, wrapped in your beauty. Love of my soul, you and only you. It's only you, leaving it all to take all of you. Love of my soul, you and only you. It's only you, consumed by your love, wrapped in your beauty. Love of my soul, you and only you. It's only you. Come on, yeah. If in love, beautiful one, we lift you up. You are so good to me, I give you everything. If in love, beautiful one, we lift you up. You are so good to me, I give you everything. If in love, beautiful one, we lift you up. You are so good to me, I give you everything. If in love, beautiful one, we lift you up. You are so good to me, I give you everything. Love of my soul, you and only you. It's only you, consumed by your love, wrapped in your beauty. Love of my soul, you and only you. It's only you, leaving it all to take all of you. Love of my soul, you and only you. It's only you, consumed by your love, wrapped in your beauty. Love of my soul, you and only you. It's only in love, beautiful one, we lift you up. You are so good to me, I give you everything. It's in love, beautiful one, we lift you up. You are so good to me, I give you everything.
I call on you. You promise to show up each time that I do, so proof that it's true. I look at you, your beauty and kindness I cannot refuse. No, I can't refuse. I can't refuse. Walking with you through all of the years, I thought I was alone, but I was so wrong. Coming to you, you promised to be there each step that I take, so show me the way, show me the way. show up each time that I do, so proof that it's true. I look at you, your beauty and kindness I cannot refuse. No, I can't refuse. I can't refuse.
Welcome to Mosaic, everybody.
Welcome to church.
My name's Aaron. I'm one of the pastors here, and this is my lovely wife, Haven. And we're just so glad to have you joining us for this gathering right now.
Yeah, we have a whole team of people who are praying for you and care about you. So if you're in need of prayer or have a prayer request, use the live stream chat right now and connect with someone.
And today we have the unique opportunity to be able to share this gathering with anyone around the world. So copy the link mosaic.org/live and send it to a friend, send it to a family member. Let them know you're thinking about them right now.
We're about to begin, so get your coffee, get settled in on your couch, send the link to a friend or a family member, and worship with us.
You are constant in the way that you forgive me, steady as the moon that shifts the tide, consistent in the way that you believe in me, true in how you choose me every time. To the end, I will stand with you to the end, devoted to you to the end. I will sing to you to the end. You are constant in the way that you amaze me, steady as the moon that brings the night. You're consistent in the way that you're redeeming me, true in how my past won't change your mind. To the end, I will stand with you to the end, devoted to Jesus is running.
know that there's so much going on right now, and we want to let you know that we're always here for you. We want you to stay connected to community, and the best way you can do that is to connect with us online. You can follow us on Instagram, download the Mosaic app, or sign up for our newsletter at mosaic.org/newsletter.
The new album Human from MSC is out everywhere. We have a couple of things for you. We have live concert videos on YouTube available right now. And we have an 8-day devotional from our very own MSC. We can check it out that on the Bible app. It's amazing. I loved it. And don't forget to follow them on Instagram to stay up to date. We love you guys.
Our awesome kids team puts together a video each week with a time for worship and to learn about the Bible. What do you love about it, Brooklyn?
I love when we get to sing and dance. To watch, go to mosaic.org/kids.
I'm John Thomas.
My name is Matt Pagan.
That's right. We're youth pastors here.
At Mosaic. And this Friday we have something special for you. What do we have?
We got Friday, Youth at Night, 10 p.m.
Yo, what's up, Mosaic? Yeah! Our parents are going to be on teen night.
So for everyone that realizes that this is out of control, we have the ability to contribute to the change by acknowledging that this is for real and putting something on it. Do something. Pick up the phone, you can text message, there's numbers going all across. Do something.
Yeah.
Do something.
This week. So go check it out.
RSVP for Team Night at mosaic.org/team night. See you there this Wednesday at 6. Peace.
Oi, tudo bem? For all our Brazilian family out there, or if you know anyone that speaks Portuguese, we have new gatherings in every Sunday at mosaic.org/Brazil. So send the link to a friend e te vejo por lá.
Hey guys, right now we are in the middle of book clubs, and we are following along with Pastor Erwin's series, The Path to Inner Peace, and it's been amazing. I've been loving it, and it's not too late to join. So make sure you go to mosaic.org/book clubs.
Yeah, Kinsey and I have been leading one here in Atlanta. It's been amazing. Just having some beautiful, authentic conversations of what it looks like to have inner peace. And so if this is for you, this is for anyone that you know, make sure that you invite them to book clubs. So it's not too late. Get your copy. Go to mosaic.org/book clubs. We'll see you there.
Hey Mosaic, now we're going to step into a time of giving and generosity and talk about why we give here at Mosaic. In Luke 6:38, Jesus says, "Give and you will receive. You will be given much. It will be poured into your hands more than you can hold. You will be given so much that it will spill into your lap. The way you give to others is the way God will give to you." I love this passage so much because Jesus is essentially challenging that worldview that says, hey, if you want to get more, you want to be successful, you want to build wealth, it's all about how much you can get. He says, no, actually it's the opposite. It's all about how much you can give. And so even in times of economic uncertainty, which we find ourselves in today, it's hit my home too. My wife, Rhea, and I are unsure what the future holds as it relates to our jobs and as it relates to our income in a few weeks. But one thing we're not shaken on is that Jesus' words are true. That if we would commit to a life of generosity with no contingency, meaning whether we have more than enough, whether we have just enough, or whether we don't have enough at all, we commit our lives to generosity, because then and only then can we experience more and more. And I think once we step into that, we will begin to see Jesus provide in ways that we never thought possible. So give with us today. Go to mosaic.org/give, or even go to our app, find the giving section, and commit to a recurring gift. Your generosity is what allows us to serve our cities so well. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Bring it all to peace. Storm surrounding me, let it break. At your name, still, call the sea to still. The rage in me to still every wave. At your name, Jesus, Jesus. these bones to live, call these lungs to sing once again. I will praise Jesus, Jesus. You make the darkness tremble, Jesus, Jesus. You silence fear, Jesus, Jesus. You make the darkness tremble, Jesus, Jesus. Oh, Jesus, Jesus. You make the darkness tremble, Jesus, Jesus. You silence fear, Jesus, Jesus. You make the darkness tremble, Jesus, Jesus. Your name is a light that the shadows can't deny. Your name cannot be overcome. Your name is a light forever lifted high. Your name cannot be overcome. Jesus, Jesus. You make the darkness tremble, Jesus, Jesus. You silence fear, Jesus, Jesus. You make the darkness tremble, Jesus, Jesus. You make the darkness tremble. Jesus, 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 Jesus. Your name is a light that the shadows can't deny. Your name cannot be overcome. Your name is a light forever lifted high. Your name cannot be overcome. Your name is a light that the shadows can't deny. Your name cannot be overcome. Your name is a light forever lifted high. Your name cannot be overcome. Oh, Jesus, Jesus. You make the darkness tremble, Jesus, Jesus. You silence fear, Jesus, Jesus. You make the darkness tremble, Jesus, Jesus.
Hi, I'm Erwin McManus. I want to welcome you to Mosaic. We're going to continue our series on the path to inner peace. Today, we're going to focus on code 3. The warrior finds honor in service. We're going to focus on the power to serve. I know those two words don't usually go together, power and serve. Usually when we think of a person with power, we think of a person who no longer has to serve. And when we think of a person who has to serve, we think of a person without power. But I want us to step back and actually realize that God has actually given us power to serve. I think there's this fascinating word, dunamis, in the scriptures that actually deals with power, which is the word that we get the concept of dynamite, that we have this dunamis, this dynamite power inside of us. And it's speaking about the gifts that God places inside of every person who has given their life to him. And in 1 Peter chapter 4, verse 10, we are told each of you should use whatever gift you have received to serve others as faithful stewards of God's grace in its various forms. And so one of the things it tells us right away in the scriptures is that every single person who has entrusted their life to Jesus has been given gifts by God. And again, those gifts are in the concept of this dynamite power, this dunamis power that God has placed inside of every one of us. Now, you may not feel powerful right now, or you may not feel very gifted, or maybe you've always thought of yourself as a person who doesn't have very many talents. But if you've entrusted your life to Jesus, what the scriptures actually tell us is that God has come to dwell within you. His Spirit lives in you, and the same power that raised Jesus from the dead now actually raises you to live. And so you have these gifts inside of you, but those gifts are not there for you. It says each of you should use whatever gift you have received to serve others. So these gifts that God's placed inside of us have a very specific intention. Those gifts are there to serve others. I love this different translation in the Children's Bible of the same passage. Listen to this. Each of you received a spiritual gift. God has shown you his grace in giving you different gifts. And you are like servants who are responsible for using God's gifts. So be good servants and use your gifts to serve each other. Now, in some ways, it almost feels frustrating because if you've been given a gift, you should be allowed to use it any way you want, right? I mean, can you imagine someone giving you a gift, but then giving you requirements for how you can use that gift? And when I receive a gift, I don't really consider it a gift if it comes with obligation, if it comes with certain parameters or limitations. But I suppose if you're a parent and you have a 16-year-old child and somehow you had the capacity to buy them a car, you would give them a car, but there would definitely be guidelines. You would tell them they had to obey the law, stop at stop signs, obey the speed limit, and buckle up. And you would also probably put some parameters on where they could drive that car. And a part of the gift comes the responsibility that gift, entails. I've been given a lot of things in my life with no obligation and no strings attached, but I wonder if we've misunderstood how God gives his gifts. See, the gift that he gives us of life, the gift he gives us of love, the gift he gives us of Jesus, it comes freely to us. And there's nothing we can do to earn that. There's nothing we can do to deserve that. We just receive it. It's this beautiful gift from God of life, of love, of relationship, of freedom, of forgiveness. But when God places his gifts inside of us, that's a different story. Those gifts are placed in us for a very specific purpose. God has given you at least one gift. So I don't know who you are. I don't know what your life experience is. I don't know what your self-esteem issues are, but I do know this. You have at least one gift in you. So you may say, I have no talent, I have no skills, I have no abilities. If you've given your life to Jesus, you have at least one gift. So take a moment and just sort of own that and celebrate that. I've been given a gift from God. Now, sometimes that word is plural. He has given us different gifts, and you may have more than one gift. And in fact, I've experienced so many people that are so incredibly gifted, and it's so clear they have multiple gifts, and sometimes it can create a sense of envy, but really it should create a sense of celebration that God is so generous in the way he gives his gifts. But the gifts that God gives you are not for you. They're for others. Those gifts are placed in you as a stewardship so that you can serve others. This is, to me, a power that sometimes is underestimated and underused and maybe even misused. When we look at this particular code, it says that the warrior finds honor in serving. That the warrior of peace understands that there's no greater privilege, no greater honor than to serve another human being, than to serve a cause bigger than oneself, and to serve the God who actually came to serve us. And there's something beautiful in the spirit of a human being who loves to serve and has harnessed the power to serve. Without maybe going into too many specifics, sometimes I find the church, and if I could just take a moment, just talk to those of us who actually believe, sometimes I find the church to be incredibly self-indulgent when it comes to spiritual gifts. And in fact, the times I find the church to be incredibly weird and bizarre and unhealthy is when we over-focus on, quote, the gifts that God's given us. Because it seems to me that so oftentimes the way that we use spiritual gifts, it's almost as if we're in this spiritual jacuzzi, just sort of enjoying ourselves while the world is out in the ocean drowning in a storm. And it seems to me that the more we focus on our gifts for our own personal benefit, the more unhealthy and unlike God in their expression they become. Maybe that's why when we over-focus on our gifts, on what they do for us and how they make us feel, we actually become less effective in connecting to a world that's searching for God. I don't know what your spiritual gifts are. I don't know what gifts you have been taught to emphasize or put more weight in, but I do know this. Whatever spiritual gifts you've been given by God, those gifts were never given to you for you. They were given to you as a means to serve others. And that is a significant shift in our posture toward God. God wants to teach us to serve. And only when we have the posture of serving do we begin to exercise our spiritual gifts in a healthy and extraordinary and beautiful way. I think all the way back to King David, because I find that so oftentimes what we want is we want God in a sense to make us like kings. We want the power, but we want the freedom of not having to serve. And so oftentimes we do not like the integration of the power to serve, that we have been given power only to serve. And by the way, if you have any level of power, and if that power has come to you in your understanding from God, there is only one purpose for the power you've been entrusted with, and that's to serve. And so I want us to go back to just the beginning of David that we can almost not even talk about without calling him King David. Because we know certain things about David, even if we know very little about the Bible. We know that David became the king of Israel, and he became Israel's greatest king. We also know that David was a giant killer, that he was the one who went to war against Goliath, and he became this famous warrior. We also know that David was a shepherd and that he tended his father's sheep. But I want you to see that there is this singular description of David that marks every phase of his journey. In 1 Samuel chapter 17, beginning of verse 33, we are told this. Saul replies, "You are not able to go against the Philistines." And Saul is talking to David. And just to background just a little bit, Goliath is taunting the warriors of Israel. No one wants to go to war against Goliath because he's a giant, and all of Israel's greatest soldiers, all of Israel's greatest warriors are terrified. And even David's brothers are there, and they do not want to go to war against Goliath. And David is not supposed to be there on the front line. He's supposed to be out in the fields taking care of the sheep. And so David is instructed to bring cheese. I love that. He's delivering cheese. So he's a delivery boy to the front lines, but he just wants to be there because he wants to know what's going on. He wants to be in the middle of the action. He's kind of, well, if you could say it like this, he's above delivering cheese, but he's not beneath it. He's willing to deliver cheese and be a servant. And by his decision to serve, God positions him to lead. So it goes back. 1 Samuel 17:33. Saul replied, "You are not able to go out against this Philistine and fight him. You are only a young man, and he has been a warrior from his youth." But David said to Saul, "Your servant has been keeping his father's sheep. When a lion or a bear came and carried off a sheep from the flock, I went after it, I struck it, and I rescued the sheep from its mouth. When it turned on me, I seized it by the hair, struck it, and killed it." I love David's description. Your servant has killed both the lion and the bear. This uncircumcised Philistine will be like one of them because he has defied the armies of the living God. The Lord who rescued me from the paw of the lion and the paw of the bear will rescue me from the hand of this Philistine. Saul said to David, go, and the Lord be with you. In other words, all right, give it a shot. I hope the giant doesn't kill you. I hope God will be with you. But I love the recurring description that David gives of himself. Go back and look at me. In each one of these descriptions of David, he says, your servant, 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 servant. David doesn't describe himself as a warrior. He doesn't certainly describe himself as a king. He doesn't even describe himself really as a shepherd. He simply describes himself as a servant. And because he was a servant, he redefined what it looked like to be a shepherd. In fact, in David's entire description of being a shepherd, I'm thinking to myself, he doesn't sound like any shepherd I've ever heard of. He says, when the lion came and took one of the sheep, I went and I took the sheep back from the lion. And when the lion attacked me, I killed the lion. And when the bear came and took one of the sheep, I hunted down the bear. And when the bear attacked me, I grabbed it by the hair, slapped it around, and sent it on its way. David said, I have fought the lion and the bear, and that's prepared me to fight the giant. I just cannot imagine that there were other shepherds really like David. After all, he's very clear, these were not his sheep. This was not his flock. This was his father's flock. This was his father's sheep. And in fact, David was so looked down upon by his own father that when Samuel came looking for the king in the house of Jesse, it never even occurred to him to call for David. David was the son he never thought of. David was the son he wasn't necessarily proud of. David was left with the work of being a shepherd because he didn't seem to be worth a higher calling or a greater assignment. But even though it wasn't his sheep, it was his father's sheep. And he'd been entrusted with that flock. See, I have a suspicion that most shepherds, if they watched a lion run off with a sheep, they would think to themselves, well, that's just the cost of doing business. I mean, if you see a bear come and grab a sheep, you're probably not thinking to yourself, I'm going to go hunt the bear and get the sheep back. You're probably thinking to yourself, it's better the sheep than me. I have a sense that most shepherds would not risk their lives for their sheep. But David's posture was not that he was simply a shepherd. He was a servant. And because he was a servant, he redefined what it looked like to be a shepherd. And in fact, if you look at it carefully, what was called a shepherd looked a lot like a warrior. And in fact, because David served as a shepherd, and he elevated the meaning of a shepherd. See, whenever you have the posture to serve, whenever you discover the power to serve, whenever you decide that serving is an honor and you take on the posture of the warrior, that the warrior finds honor in service, you elevate the meaning and the definition of whatever role you are in. David redefined forever what it looks like to be a shepherd. And being a shepherd looked a lot like being a warrior. And then when David stood against Goliath and he faced down the one who mocked the name of God. You see, what isn't written in the text is that when Saul says to David, go, may the Lord be with you, that what Saul should have said was, I'm the king. I'm the anointed one. I'm the one that God has chosen. I'm the one who must go to battle. See, it should have been Saul in that battle. If his men were terrified to face the giant because they did not believe that their God was more powerful than the strength of the Philistine. It should have been Saul who stood as king to go to war against Goliath. But just because you hold the title doesn't mean that you deserve it, that you carry the weight of that responsibility. And when David stood against Goliath, he said, I'm going to win this battle not because of who I am, but because I stand here to honor the name of my God. In that moment, David was a warrior who elevated what it meant to be a warrior. And when David was a warrior, he looked like a king. And in fact, what you find in the months and years I had when God had already chosen David to be king, and it's such a curious transition that Samuel finds David and he anoints David as king while Saul is still king. Saul holds the position of king, and David holds the calling of king. Saul sits on the throne, but David has the anointing. And while David was a warrior, he was already living like a king. And so at each stage of his life, he elevates his role by taking on greater responsibility, by choosing to serve. And each time he was already living as if the next phase of his life was a reality. When David was a shepherd, he was living like a warrior. And when David was a warrior, he was living like a king. And when David lost his way as a king, it's because he had forgotten where he came from. That before he was a warrior, he was a shepherd. And before he was a shepherd, he was a servant. And when he chose to be a servant, God redefined what it was to be a shepherd, redefined what it was to be a warrior, and redefined what it was to be a king. I think sometimes we forget that God elevates us not so that we can think more highly of ourselves. God elevates us to expand our capacity to serve others. If you are right now in a position of power, if you have influence, if you have wealth, if you have position, if you hold power, there is one singular reason for your power, and that's because you've been called to serve. I think that many of us have spent our lives fighting to get out of the obligation of serving. We may have even served, but we never had a servant's heart. We worked because we had to work. We labored because we had to labor. We did the dirty jobs and we got our hands dirty because that's what we had to do, but we didn't take on the posture of a servant. And the only way you can know if you took on a posture of a servant when you had no power is that you're taking on the posture of a servant when you have power. The only way you can know you had the posture of a servant when you had no wealth is that if you have the posture of a servant when you have great wealth. Wealth and power and fame and position, they don't change who you are at your core. They reveal who you are at your core. And if you don't choose to serve at the beginning of your journey, it will be virtually impossible to choose to serve when you find yourself weighed down by all the possessions of this world. We should never forget it, and there's no way we can overlook the paradox of Jesus being the one who has all power. It's an interesting contrast in the scriptures where Jesus says, apart from the Father, I can do nothing. And it tells us in Philippians that Jesus emptied himself of all of his power and became as nothing. And yet later, John tells us that Jesus, in John 13, now knew that all authority had been placed back under him and that he had received all power. In fact, it tells us this in verse 1. It was just before the Passover festival, and Jesus knew that the hour had come for him to leave this world and to go to his Father. Having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. Jesus and his followers were at the evening meal. The devil had already persuaded Judas Iscariot to turn against Jesus. And Judas was the son of Simon. And Jesus knew, here it is, Jesus knew that the Father had given him power over everything. In this moment, all power had been restored to Jesus. He also knew that he had come from God and he was going back to God. So this was Jesus's culminating moment. He knew that he had the power to execute anything he desired. He knew he had the power to do anything he wanted. There was no power that he did not have access to. It was all his in that moment. What would you do in that moment? You had all power. What would you do in that moment where you knew nothing was outside of your capacity? What would you do if all the power of the universe was harnessed under your will? The power to speak light into the universe, the power to create life, the power to raise the dead, the power of God, all of it contained in this man, Jesus. What would you do if you knew you had all power? And Jesus' first act, in the moment he knew that all power had been entrusted him, that all power was once again in his hands. It says in verse 4, so during the meal, Jesus stood up and he took off his outer clothing. Taking a towel, he wrapped it around his waist. Then he poured water into a bowl and began to wash his followers' feet. He dried them with a towel that was wrapped around him. And here you have Jesus, one by one, going to each of his disciples, washing their feet. And washing someone's feet was the lowest act of servanthood. It was an act of humiliation, an act of humility, when you choose it. And even Peter, when Jesus got to Peter, he said, Lord, there's just no way you're going to wash my feet. And I resonate completely with Peter. There's just no way I would let Jesus wash my feet. And Peter's like, this is not going to happen. Now, I think if it had been John, Peter would have said, wash my feet. If it had been Luke, Peter would have said, wash my feet. If it had been Judas, he would have said, wash my feet. But it's Jesus. How can you have someone who's greater than you serve you? And Jesus says, Peter, if I do not wash your feet, you will have no part in me. And Peter, who's always an extremist, said, okay, then wash all of me, Lord, not just my feet, but my head, but everything. What Jesus is saying is that the healing we need, the cleansing we need, the forgiveness we need, no one can give us that except for him. See, and the symbol, the metaphor, was their filthy, filthy feet carrying the dirt and dust of the steps they've chosen to live. And Jesus being the only one who could wash their feet and make them clean. You know, it's more than my mind can conceive that God is all-powerful and all-knowing and all-present. The omnis are pretty impressive, that God would be omniscient, omnipotent, and omnipresent. And I can get that. See, that's not hard for me to understand in relationship to myself. I get that God is more powerful than me. I don't have a hard time understanding that God is more knowledgeable than me. It's not difficult for me to understand that God is everywhere and I'm just right here. But you know what really just causes my brain to actually hurt, what causes my mind to struggle to comprehend, it's not that God is more powerful than me or more wise than me or more eternal or transcendent than me. What's amazing is to realize that God is more humble than me and than you. That God is a greater servant than you or I will ever be. I think we all want to be like God, but I think sometimes we want to be like God in all the wrong ways. I think it's even true when it comes to like spiritual gifts. It's all about our power. It's all about us. It's all about what we can do or what's done for us. We ask God to bless us, and so oftentimes that's really just a code word for God, give me more power. The power of success, the power of wealth, the power of influence, the power of fame, the power of position. How often do we think to ourselves, I want to be like God. I want to serve. I want to be like God. I want to find honor in serving others. I want to be like God. I want the power to serve. Maybe we've been asking God for the wrong things all along. Maybe we need to turn our entire view of reality upside down, and instead of asking God to make us the most important people, maybe what we need to do is ask God to teach us the most important thing as a person to do is to serve. Jesus came to turn everything upside down. He basically confounded all of our views of greatness. He said, if your master serves, then how are you ever to say it's not for you to serve? Jesus would tell us, if you want to be great in his kingdom, then be the servant of all. If you want to be first in the kingdom, then you must choose to be last. Jesus, he is the one who walked this path to inner peace. He's the one who taught us that serving is the true manifestation of power. That when you know the power of God, you know the beauty of servanthood. And I want you to know right now that Jesus has already come to serve you. In the same way he tied a towel around his waist and washed his disciples' feet, Jesus allowed a cross to be carried on his back, himself to be crucified, so that through his sacrifice, you and I might live. Jesus has already come to serve us, and through his death on the cross, he has done everything necessary for us to know forgiveness and freedom. Jesus is the God who serves. And a relationship with him begins by letting him wash your feet. It's uncomfortable. See, to have a relationship with God, you can't even begin by serving. Now, I hope and pray that you will have a life of service. I hope that you will find service and honor. I hope that you will know the power to serve. But to begin a relationship with God, it doesn't begin with you doing something for God. It doesn't begin with you choosing to serve God. It begins by you allowing God to serve you, to wash your feet, by embracing Jesus' death and his sacrifice and acknowledging it was for you, by receiving the gift of his life so that you can receive forgiveness and life. So I want to invite you right now to let Jesus wash your feet. I want to invite you right now to let Jesus tie a towel around his waist. And he did that by dying on the cross and making you clean. He will forgive you of all your sin. He will heal you of your wounds. He will take away your fears and your doubts. He'll take away your guilt and your shame. And he will make you new because he will wash you clean. If you're ready to receive a relationship with a God who would serve you and love you, I want you to just stop right now wherever you are. I want you to make a decision to cross the line of faith right now. I want to lead you in a simple prayer where you receive Jesus' forgiveness you receive his sacrifice, you receive his love, you receive his life in you. It's one simple prayer, just one sentence. Would you pray with me right now? Jesus, I give you my life. Right now, just tell him, Jesus, I give you my life. Jesus, I give you my life. Just see him right now. See him with a towel around his waist. See him washing your feet right now. See him dying for you on a cross. See him choosing to sacrifice his life so that you could live. And just tell him, Jesus, I give you my life. Jesus, I give you my life. Father, I thank you for each person within the sound of my voice who in this moment has crossed the line of faith, has put their trust in you, and has whispered this simple prayer, Jesus, I give you my life. I pray, God, that right now you would just wrap them up in your love and let them know they belong to you. I pray, God, that they would have a visceral experience of knowing that you have washed them clean, that you have made them new, that you have just washed them in your forgiveness, in your grace, in your love, in your compassion, and your kindness, and that today they have been made new. We thank you, Father, and we pray in Jesus' name. Amen. Code 3, the warrior finds honor in service. Code 3 is about finding the power to serve. The path to inner peace, it's found not by holding on to power. The path to inner peace is found when you find the power to serve others. So I want to encourage you right now to make a few small choices. One, even in the middle of quarantine, even in the middle of lockdown, find a way to serve. Find a way to serve others. And the beautiful thing is that you don't have to serve God to earn God's love. But once you've received God's love, you long to serve others. And you find that you've been gifted. Remember, God places his gifts in you. And those gifts are in you so that you can serve others and make the world a better place. So I want to encourage you right now, first of all, if you just prayed and gave your life to Jesus, if you just crossed the line of faith, to stay on just for another minute. One of our pastors is going to come and give you some next steps on your faith journey. But if you're listening to me and you're a follower of Christ and you already have a relationship with Jesus, what I want you to do right now is I want you to write down 3 ways you can serve someone else. And I want you to make a commitment, write down when you're going to do it, and make a decision to use the power within you to serve others. What would happen if all of us decided to use the power to serve to make the world a better place? We would create a movement of service that would overwhelm humanity and bring the world to the God who loves them. Hey guys, stay with me. Next week, we continue our journey on the way of the warrior and we pick up a new code. God bless you and see you next week.
Mosaic, can we just take a moment to thank Pastor Erwin for that incredible talk? Go ahead and write it in the chat, maybe the moment that spoke to you most on your faith journey.
And if you did decide to follow Jesus, we want to celebrate with you, so let us know in the chat. Also tell a friend, share the journey with them. And then download the Bible app and dive into scriptures. You can go to mosaic.org/followjesus and fill in your information and let us know there too.
We love you so much and can't wait to see you next week. We hope you have an amazing day and an amazing week. Take care.
Mwah!
I call on you. You promise to show up each time that I do, so proof that it's true. I look at you, your beauty and kindness I cannot refuse. stand with you. I will be fearless and I will be true. Will you stand with me too? I'll stand with you. I'll stand with you. I'll stand with you, Jesus. I'll stand with you. When I look, I'll find you. When I look, I'll find you. When I look, I'll find you. Oh, when I look, I'll find you. Jesus, when I look, I'll find you. And when I look, I'll find you. When I look, I'll find you. Jesus, when I look, I'll find you. I'll find you. And I'll find you. I call on you. You promise to show up each time that I do, so proof that it's true. I look at you, your beauty and kindness I cannot refuse. No, I can't refuse.